The next part of the program is always a pleasure to have a Kansas producer share their experiences. And this year it's a little different approach. It's one, oftentimes we have how family businesses have grown, and that's certainly the case for the Nelson family that'll be talking next. But we really appreciate Terry and Julia's daughter-in-law are going to be speaking with us. And for those that know the Nelson family and for those that don't, want to just give a little bit of background. Their family homesteaded in the Long Island area back in 1877, and Clark, who is Terry's son, is the sixth generation to be on the family farm, and where the original homestead is right where some of the livestock operation is today. They're very diversified in the family business. They have a grain elevator that helps with their grain procurement and their own feed mill. Along with their sows, and they'll get into the swine production side, but they'll be back up to about 11,000 sows, and then have all the nursery and finishing spaces around that Long Island area to service out of their feed mill. But they also operate a cattle feedlot of 15,000 head. They have 9,000 acres of cultivated ground. They run 15,000 acres of grass, which would accompany about 2,000 cows in that cow herd. One of the other business sides that their family has been involved with for a number of years is the banking side, and they're involved in banking in the First State Bank in 5-county area out in northwest Kansas. When we talked about different producers, and again, we're very gracious that Terry and his family are going to share. They went through a fire last summer on their sow farm, and for all those that have been through different events, those are very vivid in your mind. I remember, I've been through two of them, not nearly to this degree. My family, we had a small ewe flock when me and my two brothers, one night we had a really nice one of those old red barns full of hay and straw. One night that went up like a Roman candle and just lost the entire flock. Another time in grade school, I remember coming home and fuses went out on our positive pressure nursery, and coming home and having about 300 head of 50-pound nursery pigs piled up by the side of the road. That gets everybody in the school bus's attention, all the kids just glued to the side of the bus, seeing that many dead pigs. Those things that all happened to me in grade school, and they're very vivid. I can remember those like they were yesterday, and we've all been through different things, whether it's tornadoes, blizzards, all the different things that cause the casualties of our livelihood. And so again, these aren't easy areas to always talk about. We appreciate Terry and Julia for visiting with us here today. They have a number of slides, and they'll go through some of the what they went through and kind of where they're going with their family business and overcoming, rebuilding after a disaster. So with that, we'll turn it over to Terry and Julia.
Can everybody hear me all right? Let's see if we have enough room for all of this stuff. And I'm over 40, so it takes one of these days. So, just to give you a little feedback or set the stage a little bit before we get going, we basically have about 75 employees on the ag side. 50 of those are on the swine side. So we've got a feed mill, feed yard, farming, elevator, trucking that hauls all the hogs to slaughter, and so you know this event really touched them all. I mean, it affected the feed mill, it affected the elevator, and you name it, and they all got probably part of the rebuilding after the disaster. So with that said, we'll see if. This is, let me see if I can, is that? Okay, this is Husky. It was built in 2000. It was a Y2K. We started it up the second week of 2000. And on June 6th of this year, we had a slight breeze from the northeast, basically running right in through here. These are farron barns. These are gestation barns that hold 1,600 head apiece. And this is a gilt barn. This one's going to be our nemesis before we get done with this. And then this was a farron barn. Let me back up just a little bit. You've heard, I don't know what, can you hear all right, or is it a big echo? Okay. As with all hog operations, especially in the United States, one of our main parts of our team, we're all blessed with fantastic veterinarians. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. I mean, they're kind of our rule book, they're our playbook. We've got some of the best in the United States. You're going to hear a little later, I've known Dr. Henry forever, and we also have a vet team out of Minnesota. We use the Swine Vet Services, Dr. Lola, Dr. Jake Swartz, and they brought along Dr. Chris Sievers. They do a lot of the research for Kansas State University or vice versa up there around Mankato, Minnesota. So they've got a really good relationship with Kansas State University. So that's kind of our team. And the reason why I say that is it's really good to know when you get into one of these things what's going to happen next. In 2014 on this site, our general manager come in at 9 o'clock in the morning and says, I'm afraid we might have PED. This was 9 o'clock in the morning. He says, we've got one room that it just looks like PED. By 10 o'clock in the morning, there were 5 rooms with PED. By 10:30 that morning, we had already called Dr. Lola, and he sent us a PowerPoint presentation of what you do in a PED event, and we printed it out, and it was 3/4 of an inch thick. A play-by-play, page-by-page. This is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to need to do. But truly, I don't think we could have got through it, if we wouldn't have had that playbook. Well, when you get in one of these events, it just so happened I was 20 miles away on June the 6th. I was getting ready to take a neighbor of mine over to the Swine, the World Pork Expo, over to Joe Kearns' place. We were going to leave at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This was 11:20 in the morning. I got the phone call. I was 20 miles away, and my only concern was how fast that Chevy pickup could get down the highway, and the biggest problem was it was limited to 95 mile an hour. Because in these events, time, seconds, and minutes is everything. And I hope nothing like this ever happens to any of you. We sure didn't have it on our playbook for that day, for that year. But maybe you'll take 1 or 2 things away from it if it ever does happen. We learned a lot. There were a few mistakes along the way. We learned a lot. We're still in the process of getting this accomplished. But we had, whoa. Let's back up. Okay, we had a wind, 15 mile an hour, and it was 85 degrees at 11:20 in the morning. Not a big deal. The only problem is we had just replaced all of these barns with brand new cool cells. They were 15 years old, just brand new, had not fired them up yet. This was the last end of the last barn, and somehow that cool cell caught on fire. And so while I was driving a little too fast, said, what in the world can it be? Well, we don't know. Was it electrical? So we had a subcontractor of a subcontractor of a contractor. That really creates a lot of liability issues, doesn't it? Basically caulking the last cool cell that we were getting ready to fire up. And he was in there by himself, so we don't know really what happened, except there were cigarettes on the outside of the ground and a cigarette lighter, and we have a rule, no tobacco, no smoking no smoking inside this sow farm ever. Always has been for 15 years. So all we know is this cool cell got on fire, all these fans were running, and so it just sucked that fire right down through the rafters. It's a cool cell barn. I hope most of you know what that is. It sucks the air through the cool cell, the air goes up into the attic, comes down into the room, and it cools the whole room. All of these barns are cooled. So, That's to kind of foreshadow is it electrical? Is it cigarettes? Was it a propane torch? Was it it was getting close to lunch? You know, we don't know.
And the gentleman was by himself, so that just adds kind of another piece to the puzzle, is that we didn't have any company representatives nearby that could kind of vouch for what was going on.
And no speak English. So, you know, the first thing we knew about, he was beating on the window outside the office, "It's on fire, it's on fire." So they were actually having a lunch break. They went out and got everybody else. They grabbed fire extinguishers, went running down the halls, realized that, I mean, there was smoke coming out of the rooms. You know, it was way too late, so they went back, called the main office to call the fire department. Same time that they were calling the office, the alarm company said, "You've got a high heat alarm in your farrowing room at the sow farm." Well, that was going to do a lot of good, but anyway, they called 911, and here's kind of what it looked like after that. So this is the farrowing rooms, and basically the fire is coming out of the farrowing rooms. You can see not a lot of strong winds, but basically the fire is where all the plastic slats are burning, you know, inside the farrowing rooms. You could tell it got pretty hot there. The first thing, while I was in that 20-mile drive, I called a couple of our employees and I said, "You need to bring the big loader, you need to bring the dozer," you know, because we knew that we were probably going to have to knock out our hallways if we had any chance at all of saving any of the barns. And when I got there, I really didn't think we would save any of them. It was on the wrong end of the wrong barn on the whole site. So right there's one of the big loaders that we used, and that's what it looked like in about 15 minutes. This is probably a picture. You know, I'm not a big Facebook guy. I'm not a big Twitter person. But as soon as that alarm went out to 911, it seemed like it was on Facebook everywhere. You know, all the wives called all their husbands. They were all on sprayers. They all had tankers. And they all showed up in about 30 minutes.
And we don't live in, you know, a heavily populated area. We're very small towns, and it was amazing. We had 8 local fire departments and 30 fire trucks respond. And I think, you know, part of the saving grace for us was that it was, you know, early spring. Everybody had their tankers out. They were spraying fields. So farmers, you know, unloaded their chemicals, filled up with water, and just showed up, you know. It was just amazing to see the community support, and that saved so much for us.
So we were a little lucky because our local fire department, little town of Long Island, 200 people, happen to have a brand new fire truck that'll pump 1,000 gallons a minute at 1,200 pounds of pressure, and it'll shoot a stream 400 foot long. The one come from Phillipsburg, which is 20 miles away, it could do the same thing. You know, it's just amazing the equipment but, okay, 1,000 gallons a minute, that's gonna take a lot of water. So we actually had a well on the corner of this property, and they drained the water towers in Almena and Long Island, and we kept that well running the whole time. You'll see there's a lot of rivers running by the time they get done. So this right here, that was one of the ends of the farm barn. You'll see it a little bit later, but they kept a lot of water on that. In fact, Clark, my son, and her husband took the excavator. So about 30 minutes into it, we had a big excavator that was about a half a mile away. We called for the excavator, and Clark went through there and knocked that whole end of that barn down and knocked that hallway out. So we knocked a bunch of the hallways out, but we didn't get them all. So you want to get them all. And so he knocked that hallway out. It got so hot in this barn that the electrical piping, the water lines got so hot that they fell on the floor, and there was this much black soot on the floor of that hallway of the barn that didn't burn. Why that didn't burn, was one other really important reason, and that is this generator shed. The first thing that the fire department did was killed all the power to all the barns, which dropped a lot of emergency curtains for the air in all the G barns, but it stopped sucking all the fire through the barns. So if you can remember anything, kill all the power. You know, it was, I don't think we would have thought about it, but that was the first thing the fire department said. So, usually where there's smoke, there's fire. This was about 3 minutes before this. And so this was that last G barn that burned. It got so hot in there, there was not one stitch of a rafter left. There wasn't any wood anywhere in that system. So you had all that steel that just fell clear down on top of the crates. And you had some sidewalls, and you'll find out in a little bit, you know, these barns are pretty complex, but they're really pretty simple. I mean, we've all built a lot of them, but this kind of give us the reality of, you know, what can happen, what won't happen. And then there were some miracles in the whole thing too. So this didn't take very long to gut all the rafters in there. Still got smoky. So this was one of those trucks, and there's the toy of choice. So if you ever have one of these, or if you know of a contractor that has an excavator, you need him on speed dial, because that's the first person you need to call while you're driving to the fire. And this just happened to be about a half a mile away. We had to road it over there. And so then we had to, well, we'll show you. So there's the fire trucks at 3:20. So it started at 11:20. By 3 o'clock, all the fire trucks were gone. Party's over. You know, and that's when you kind of say, this kind of sucks. You know, now what? And you didn't have the heart to tell the rest of your employees it was probably going to get worse before it got better. So this was the rivers of water that come, you know, because they basically, right here, this barn right here was our gilt barn. And there may be another picture, but that's where we took an excavator right down beside there, through all of that barn, away from it. But that barn was 12 foot from that barn. There wasn't a pig inside that had a problem. You can't even see a smoke, a black smoke on any of the tin on that barn. It was 12 foot right beside it. So the fire department kept it all watered down, kept it cool enough. That was unbelievable that we didn't have any smoke loss from any of the other sows in any of the other barns. But it got everything. I mean, there was no saving anything. So we said that that was June 6th, day before World Pork Expo. The last day of World Pork Expo, that was a Tuesday, this was a Friday. This was that gestation barn. I think there's some other pictures. You know, so the first thing you do is, it's going to be 100 degrees tomorrow, and the next day, Wednesday and Thursday, and we had 1,600 dead sows in crates, and they're going to start falling apart in about 2 or 3 days. So, I mean, the very next day, we brought in our silage trucks, and we have an excavator with a thumb on it. You ripped off the steel building, you ripped off the crates, and you'd pick up 3 or 4 sows at a time and swing them around, put them in a silage truck. Took about 60 to 70 loads of dead hogs to our compost site 15 miles away. So the big question is, and I don't know that it's the right answer, you know, do you bury them? Do you compost them? You know, we just happen to have a compost site that's covers about 4 acres, and that's where all of our deads on all of our operations go. So it was just easier to load the trucks up and send them up there. And it worked out all right until I didn't tell Clark that you didn't want to load the trucks. So I did day one. This half. He started in here on day 2. I'd usually put 30 to 40 on. I think he put 60 on. Well, the problem with that is there was a hill, and they took off at the stop sign across the highway, and they scattered them all out across the highway because the tailgate come open. So that was on day 3. So, there were a few things that you just don't want to do. So.
Yeah, we learned that Vicks serves a lot of good purposes because, just the smell was atrocious. So I think we gave everybody a bottle of Vicks so that they had something to kind of help with that side of it too.
So this was that Gilt developer barn. It's 700 head of stalled crates. And that's going to be just a little problematic as we go forward. So we were flying out to the World Pork Expo. The most important reason was we needed to get with our veterinarian team and figure out, now what do we do? Because our breeding target was about 380 a week. That means we had 320 to 330 sows bred every week. And guess what? 2 of them are still, we got 2 months of 320 a week with 364 crates left. Most of you guys that raise pigs realize that's going to be fun. That's like a 7 to 8 day weaning for the next 2 months. So, what else do you do? And then we go down to 50 a week for the next 6 weeks, and then back up to 320 for another 2 weeks before we finally get through the 16-week cycle. So this is what that looked like when we were done. And why we didn't burn this down and those down, it's just short of a miracle, but I would say it's seconds, it's water, it's seconds and minutes, water, and an excavator is the only reason why we didn't burn them down. I'm going to turn it over to you.
And yeah, here's kind of where my piece comes in. While Terry and Clark were down with the cleanup efforts and all that entailed, before too long, the Associated Press contacted our main office wanting a statement, and then we had, news crews that just showed up. And at that point, what do you do? Do you turn them away, or do you go ahead and kind of tell your story and tell everyone what happened? So that was something that I didn't have on my radar, and I guess in hindsight, that would be something I would definitely recommend would be, if you ever have a disaster like this, definitely kind of have some thoughts together and be prepared for people to want to know what's going on. So.
You want this? Or you got that? Okay. Whoops.
Sorry. Technology.
$9,000 animals on a Kansas hog farm is under investigation. Officials saw flames and thick smoke coming from the Husky Hogs farm in Phillips County yesterday morning. Gardner Royce has the latest.
There's still tons of activity here at Husky Hogs as crews clean up and try to take stock of everything they lost. Already they estimate the loss to be several millions of dollars as thousands of hogs died in the fire.
At one point, it looked like we were going to lose everything, and then people just started driving by with trucks of water, not at all involved with the fire departments, and, just really stepped in and saved so much for us.
The volunteer and additional firefighters helped them contain the fire that burned 3 barns before they got it under control.
As soon as we got out there, we started our deck gun on our pumper, and we pumped at least 1,000 gallons a minute for 2 hours solid and never ran out of water but once.
Husky Hogs estimates 2,000 sows and 7,000 piglets were killed, but the help from the community and neighboring responders saved close to 4,500 additional hogs.
In such a vulnerable moment, we had so much outstanding community support, and It's a testament to people in small communities. We band together when we need it, and we would do the same for anyone in need, and it meant the world to us.
A devastating fire, but here at Husky Hogs, still some optimism because they know it could have been so much worse. In Long Island, Gardner Royce, Eyewitness News.
One person who was not an employee at the farm was hurt and taken to a Wichita hospital with an unknown condition.
Okay, and then I have one more to show.
You could give your people color and water. A North Central Kansas hog farm is busy cleaning up debris from a fire that burned one worker and killed almost 9,000 pigs. It happened on Tuesday at Husky Hogs in Long Island. Today, KSN's Amanda Aguilar spoke to company officials about how the fire impacted business operations. She has that out of our Central Kansas newsroom.
The fire leveled 3 farrowing barns here at Husky Hogs. Around 2,000 sows and 7,000 piglets were killed in that fire. But with the help of fire crews and the community, more than 4,000 sows were saved, which means the fire won't stop operations at Husky Hogs.
A lot less than a normal day, but I mean, it's such a bright spot, you know, that to have anything left.
Julian Nelson says the 3 barns were fully engulfed in flames on Tuesday.
At one point, it looked like probably an hour into the fire, I spoke with one of the managers, and he wasn't sure if we would be able to save anything.
It took fire crews about 4 hours to control the blaze, and by Wednesday, employees were back to work.
They had 190 pigs born yesterday, so they are, keeping the current health of all the new baby pigs and all the moms.
Aside from regular operations, crews are busy cleaning up debris from the fire. This includes separating building materials and animal remains.
We'll still have to rebuild the barns that were destroyed, and then obviously purchase new breeding stock. And then all that just takes time. It doesn't, it's not an instant back up to production.
Company officials say they don't know what caused the fire, but the state fire marshal is conducting an investigation. I'm also told the financial loss is around $1 to $5 million, but that could change as the cleanup process continues. Here for you in Phillips County, Amanda Aguilar, KSN News.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. We will stay in touch with officials and let you know when they determine what caused that massive fire.
Next.
Oh, I guess one thing I did also want to mention, do you mind going back one slide? We were hosting a fundraising event for another local project that just happened to coincide that following week after the fire. So we did host all the emergency management teams and their families that responded, and had a dinner kind of as an appreciation for their involvement in the cleanup.
So once a year we have a sporting clay shoot to kind of raise the level of the local lake, and it just happened to be we had everything set up, so we invited all the firemen back, and we give them free shells and guns, and that next Tuesday. So okay, so the first thing we did was call the insurance company. And the whole problem is all right, who's going to pay, right? That just got really uncomfortable with me really quick. You've got an electrical company that has worked for you for 15 years, done a great job. We're absolutely sure it's not that, but they say that it is. We know it's not. I mean, this just is not going to go well. We notified KDHE. We began the debris removal immediately the next day. We come up with a plan to work around the lost buildings and the big flow adjustments. So that's kind of what it looked like once we started cleaning it up, and it was just, a mess to start with. This is that got really hot. There was aluminum bubble insulation, and it basically just melted around the tuba 6s. Now, I don't know why in the world the tuba 6s didn't catch on fire, or why this brand new cool cell didn't catch on fire. So, except for a lot of water. So, let's back up. We notified the insurance company. Obviously, you never know what kind of insurance you have until you have a fire, and you sure hope you had a good insurance agent. You hope you have a good insurance company. So fortunately, we can say, I mean, we were with Nationwide, and we'd been paying our insurance premiums, even though it was with different companies throughout the years. We also had a BI policy, or business interruption policy. It was always a little bit of a, well, how much BI should you have? Because this is the mother farm. This serves 50,000 finishing spaces, 27,000 nursery spaces, a GDU barn and everything else. If you lose the whole sow farm, how much do you need? I can tell you if we lost the whole sow farm, we didn't have enough. So we had $4.5 million worth of BI insurance. We had $8.2 million of total P&C insurance on this site. I thought it was probably a little too much. But guess what? The buildings that we lost were $4.5 million. We lost $1 million worth of sows. And most policies, you never read the fine print. That's the other half of it, is, who do you go for? Well, actually, we had several attorneys call and say, you're going to need us. We had some forensics accountants call, you're going to need us. Well, we had our family attorney call and say, you know what, we've got an attorney here that's worked for the insurance companies for about 15 years. We think he can help you. And that has been a really good deal. I mean, the first thing he did was picked up the whole insurance policy, read it front to back, and say, this is the policy that you bought. In that P&C, they also have a 25% removal of debris removal. So that means out of $4.5 million, you've got up to $1 million worth of debris removal. And guess what? All those lagoon lines went under all those old barns that burned. Now none of your septic system works because it's all plugged up from the fire. So that was problem number 2, besides removing all the dead pigs. So we also went and got a forensics accountant. Anybody know what a forensic accountant is? Knows what they do? Yeah, well, first of all, call your banker, because he's probably going to know, especially a hog lender, probably knows where the forensics accountant is. We actually, we hired Steve McWilliams. He's out of Omaha. This is the 18th claim that he's done in his lifetime. Unfortunately, it's the biggest claim that he's done in his lifetime. And, this is just a small part of it, but, and we kind of distorted this, but so, we typically kicked out about 3,400 to 3,500 pigs a week, just like clockwork. We finally, after 15 years, kind of got the magic button. And so you're going to have a pig shortfall, and the BI basically guarantees, it guarantees the same situation as if you didn't have a fire. So it guarantees the final outcome economically, net cash flow, net income for basically for 6 months after you get it rebuilt. That's the policy that we had. The question is whether that was going to be good enough. I don't know that you'll ever know, but I can tell you these things are costly. By the time we got done, there's going to be close to $10 million worth of an insurance claim. There's going to be about a $3.5 to $4 million BI claim probably. But we kind of knew that from the start, said, this is not going to look good. So we had a pig shortfall cost, we had an extra breeding cost, we basically consumed 3 different finishing sites because now we lost 2,000 gilts, and then we'll get into the complications of another decision that we made here in a little bit. So we had to convert our regular gilts that we were going to sell as basically back cross gilts. We had to convert them to sows just to replace our shortfall. Then we had to sell some pigs early because we didn't have enough room, and then Lord help us, of all the small pigs that we're going to wean over the next 3.5, 4 months, because we have to wean them at 8 to 9 days. Does this sound like fun to anybody? Not to all of us that grow pigs. And pig shortfall margins. Now you have all those pigs that you didn't raise, that you should have had a margin on, and that really won't stop till about July of this year.
And another part of that with the business interruption was just, daily documentation. Every day we would send somebody down to take pictures of the progress, to track, what equipment had been used, what personnel was using the equipment, just trying, as best we could to get a good picture of what the debris removal costs were going to be.
And I would say that's a really important thing. We thought we were just going to say, all right, keep track of your hours. Write it down on a paper. We found out in the first week, no, we're going to dedicate somebody not related to it at all to double check those hours every day, verify it, and take pictures every day. And that was the only way, because in the end, the insurance company is going to ask you for documentation. How many people, how many hours, what kind of equipment, how are you going to verify all those costs that it's going to cost to clean this thing up? It took us 2 months to clean everything up, get the pads rebuilt so that we knew that we were ready to go back. We actually started building within about 6 weeks on the Farron barn, but it took us 2 months to get it off the site so we could rebuild. So this is one of the excavators tearing the roof off, tearing the crates out of the concrete, picking up the dead pigs. That's where we were loading the silage trucks with the dead pigs. That's just half of the barn. So this barn, that's just this half flipped over onto this half, and all the pigs are still, so this is day 2. This was Clark's job. This was me and the excavator on day 1. I had the easy job. I flipped it over, and he had to flip it all back. Doc.
One thing you should probably say, I got asked a question by the insurance guy, is the barn was insured, the sow barn, but we incurred losses at the nursery because we were weaning 5 to 6 day old pigs, and they at first said, well, that's nursery, that's not involved in any of this thing, and so they called me for something and say, so the death loss, we could have killed the pigs or euthanized them at 5 days, but we took them to the nursery and went to 10% death loss, and we wanted those as part of the fire thing. And the first blush was they didn't want to, that was that nursery, there was no fire there.
That's when you needed the attorney and the forensics accountant that had done this before and said, no, this BI insurance covers the whole site, it covers the whole revenue of all of those pigs. You're not just a wean pig Farron facility. You're going to have other complications throughout the whole site. So that's a really important point if you're going to buy BI insurance, to make sure that it covers everything. And then the question is, how much do you buy? So we're going to have to, Julia says we're going to have to step it up here. Okay, so they went to a compost site, 3 to 4 acres. We filled it 8 foot deep. But it had all kinds of crates and steel, and so we had to have little bobcats. We had 2 of them that basically had to piece through all the dead pigs and pick out, they had air conditioners in them, thank goodness, but they had to pull out all the steel and the crates and everything else that just got loaded by accident. But it was clear full. I was shocked. That's a big compost site. You can see kind of, that's before they went into the compost site. And that's what it looked like on November the 22nd. Wouldn't even know it happened. You know, so I mean, they really work amazingly well. You know, we'll end up piling that up a couple more times, but you know, a year from now, you'll never even know it. So then that's where all the crates and tin went. So now, the real question is, rebuild it back exactly as it was, move on, don't rebuild it at all. That's a big decision. And then, of course, you always have, I don't know about you, Dr. Henry, but we've always had vets, you don't have enough farrowing. You don't have enough days on your pigs, and so they're always wanting one more farrowing room, always wanting two more farrowing rooms. Well, or do you to have another farrowing room, right? So do you see the adversity as an opportunity to change your whole business structure? We weren't in favor of pen gestation. But if you're going to go back and you're going to rewrite the playbook, you know, is now the time to do it. So we choose to build bigger barns, therefore expanding all areas. So we lost 468 crates. We built back a farrowing barn that had 1,152. So you can say, oh, they just created another problem. So we went from 7,000 sows to 11,000 sows. So instead of replacing 2,000, now we had to replace about 7,000 sows. And it's going from a 380 breeding target, we needed to go to 550 to 600 as soon as the farrowing barn was done. So you better have those dates about right. Build barns that are more friendly to animal rights activists. So then we went through the regulatory, the financial business side, the construction. Oh, guess what? Is this going to be a problem? You know, we've got a workforce of about 75 throughout the whole ag operation. Now we're going to need 25 more employees if we do this. How are we going to fix that? We already have probably 5 to 10 openings that we're looking for help wanted ads. So this is Julia's writing. This is a period of extreme diligence by the parties involved. So it was probably a little bit more than diligence, but we had to reroute all the lagoon lines around the building site. So we brought in a cruncher to bail up all of that stuff. Do you remember that barn that we showed you, that gilt developer? Well, guess what? That's right in the wrong footprint. That's right where we want a new gestation barn. What are we going to do with that? And Doc Lola says, oh, no big deal. You can just take that top off. Anybody ever take a top off of a farrowing or of a gilt developer? He says, well, you know, some people have just taken the tin off and you just lay the rafters right across it. Well, then the problem is we got fans on both sides, and how does the air work? You know, that's going to get really glitchy. And our building contractor said, we don't know how you're going to do that. It's not our deal. In fact, we don't want anything to do with it, is what they said. So this got a little dicey before it got done. Guess what? That's how we do it. Now, that was a 30-foot section. That was the first 30-foot section. We decided that 30 foot is too much. 16 foot is a lot better. After we made that decision, the whole rest of the barn came down in less than 2 hours. So, I mean, they're complicated barns, but they're pretty simple barns. You know, it's not impossible. I mean, literally, we took that whole barn down in less than 2 hours. There's a 16-foot section right there's the end piece. So then we immediately started building a 1,152 crate farrowing barn. This is as soon as we got all of that steel out of there and baled up. And so we were lucky. It was June the 6th. Everybody was out spraying. There were 10 farmers that showed up with 3,000, 6,000 gallon tankers. How often is that going to happen? June 6th of every year, and that's it. You know, if it was July, if it was anywhere else, you're done. I mean, you're going to run out of water. So we made the conscious note to, I know it's an expanded picture. It's not as good as we'd like, but we decided that we're going to put fire rings. We're going to make the new facilities big enough that we can afford to put fire rings or fire hydrants around all of the new facilities. So that is one of about 26 new fire hydrants that are going around the facilities. That's the new style. You can see that barn that we took down sets inside of that gestation barn. There's 2,500 gestation there, 2,500 here, 1,152 crates. So that means now you don't have enough nursery space, now you don't have enough finishing space. So, you know, I said that it was going to get dicier. This is what it looks like as it's going up right now. This is the inside of the gestation barn with those gestation pins, 17 stanchions to a pin. They basically have twist, turn, walkthroughs on all of them so that people can walk through them. Really people friendly, they're big, open. We also put some stalls in them. This is about a week old picture, so that's what it looks like. In the Farron barn, we did a new little twist. This is basically a sow cooler. So 9 months out of the year, there's a lever in there that's actuated by a thermostat that regulates the cool air that comes down on the sow to keep the sow cool. Otherwise, we went with, instead of plastic, they're galvanized, basically wire flooring with draft controllers and double heat lamps and galvanized. We basically went with 7 by 6 foot wide crates on all of these. 18 rooms of 64 crates. So when we got all done, we asked, all right, since Dr. Tim wanted one more Farron room, and we give him 2, we said, all right, Doc, do you have any last request? And he said, yeah, I do. He said, I would like viewing rooms. So we don't have to shower people in, but we can kind of show them what hog production looks like. So in this cool cell here and in this cool cell here, there's about 8 or 10 huge glass viewing windows so that you can take people in there and you can see this whole room or you can see this whole barn. So it allows a little bit more consumer-friendly viewing of hog production. Quite honestly, we wouldn't have thought about that. And there's the viewing windows from inside that gestation building. There's the Farron crates with the air tubes. So we fired this thing up, guess what? 8 below. Don't think we need any extra air coming out of these tubes, even though they're sealed off. So we had to really seal them off. We had to put garbage bags over them and duct tape them. We'll get it figured out, but we sure didn't need any extra air at 8 below. This is a little hard to see, but this is the alleyway of the Farron rooms. It's 10 foot wide, 12 foot high. So really high ceilings. It's got a divider wall so that you can run sows down one side, pigs down the other side. You can flip-flop them, you can step over it. You know, it's just some of the new designs that there's the loadout, there's the dead chute door, there's the loadout. Yes? 1 minute? Okay. We'll have to hurry then. This is the nursery. It's 24,000 head nursery. That's what it looks like today. So we've done a lot of dirt work in the last 6 months, done a lot of building. You know, I mean, $10 million worth of an insurance claim. You know, I mean, you know, you're going to have to forgive me, probably a little too transparent, but by the time we get done, there's about $25 million worth of buildings. 30 miles of underground pipe, 8-inch underground pipe, gas lines, electric lines. So you can imagine we've had an irrigation company busy for the last 4 months installing 8-inch lines, water lines. This is a 65,000 gallon reserve water tank that feeds the whole system, including the feed yard. So that's the nursery, the new style, 25 head nursery pens. This is a 24,000 head finisher, 4 6,000 head barns. Dr. Jake Schwartz's most favorite site. He said he just loves great big sites. No, he doesn't. So he tried to convince us of other, but you know, we should be able to fill that in about a month. Fill it, clean it. So that's some of the sites in progress today as we speak. There's another one, Rolling Hills. It's going to be another 10,000 head finisher. So the lessons learned. This is probably the most important reason. You know, what is that one little moment that you can take home if you ever get into this mess? You know, what might you want? Fire takes a lot of water. If you can, have an irrigation well, you know, I mean, fire takes a lot of water. Immediate access to proper equipment, quick reaction is important. If you know somebody with an excavator, call them on the way to the fire, almost before 911. Access to excavators, dozers, electricity was shut off immediately. Cleanup process must start as soon as possible, is done as quickly. Call your vet immediately. Well, he's at the World Pork Expo. Actually, he called me right in the middle of the fire for some reason. I mean, Dr. Tim doesn't call that often. And I said, Doc, I've got to hang up. Husky's on fire. I think we're going to lose it all. You know, so then he calls back to the main office and says, make sure they knock out the hallways. You know? So they called over and said, Doc Lola says, make sure you knock out the hallways. And yep, I think we're trying to get that done. So your pig flow just got destroyed for 18 months. When we talk about destroyed, it just, I mean, you've never seen a mess on a pig flow until you lose half your farron crates. And you still have a lot of your sows left. So if you have a business interruption policy, kind of the rule of thumb after this deal, 1,000 sows, $1 million worth of business interruption. If it's going to be your mother farm, if you're going to absolutely stake your livelihood on it, which we do, this is our mothership, you need $1 million per 1,000 sows. Because you got 50,000, now we're going to have 90,000 finishing spaces and 50,000 nursery spaces. 11,000 sows, you're going to need an $11 million business interruption policy. Hire an attorney who has experience in insurance, fires, and rebuild is critical. Find a great forensics accountant. We've got the name of one. He's really good. Solution to need 25 additional employees. Well, we about lost our corrections facility in Norton in 2009 during the crash. And one of the main reasons was they didn't have any basically inmate work experience. So we went to the prison and said, you know what, we need to help you with that problem. And as of December 1st, we started hiring inmates as a workforce. And as of today, we have 20 new inmates, and they're fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Took a little while to get through the educational piece with the civilian labor force, but you know, they have, so far, you know, no signs of any glitches whatsoever.
And those are individuals that are 12 months, you know, from being released. And it's just been amazing how well that program has worked out and how hard they've pushed our civilian workforce. So far, we're just seeing a lot of benefits, you know, and there's a lot of benefits at the state level, too, as far as how their compensation is paid back and things like that. So it's just been, so far, it's been a really great program.
So we pay them a normal wage. We take out FICA and MICA, send the rest of it to the state. They take out court costs, child support, whatever it may be. That's not our deal. We don't have to do background checks.
And we have a very rigorous drug and alcohol program, and that is not a problem either. So
we've got a really strong drug and alcohol program. We test everybody every quarter, and our tests are highly sensitive, 20 times better than the hospital. We just don't believe in it. And we said, well, We're going to test inmates too. And they said, that's just fine. If you have any positive, bring them back home. We'll give you another one. So when is there a time to expand? You know, we've always had a philosophy, if you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're not growing, you better figure out when to grow, or you better figure out when to sell it. You know, obviously Ben and his crew have been growing immensely in all kinds of different areas. I'm not sure whether we want to take on that ambition, but you know, we had no desire to grow. The sow farm was going to be the sow farm. We're pretty comfortable where we were, but that's not a good business strategy. Well, this changed that completely. So now we're about 60% bigger. And we hope it's, you know, it's a calculated risk. Safety culture, fire extinguishers in all vehicles. We've always had fire extinguishers in all vehicles, but the most important thing is, you know, that dilemma between whose fault was this? You know, was this electrical? Was this contractor? Was it our fault? This is hard, guys. We tried to put it in place about 5 years ago. It's called an escort program. That means anybody that shows up on our place will be escorted and helped. The John Deere mechanic shows up, we're going to help that John Deere mechanic work on that piece of John Deere equipment. You know, or the cat equipment, or the grain probe, or if we're replacing a cool cell, we're going to have a responsible person, at least one responsible person helping them at all times. That's hard, but that's the rule. And so that's probably been one of the biggest take-home. We should know what happened, right? If you had an escort program, we would know. So we just said, you know, we're going to take accountability for this and move on. I think we're done. Any questions? Thank you for your time.
Did your employees have morale issues in the 2 months after the fire?
Did the employees have morale issues after the fire? You know, we kept them busy enough that they probably didn't have a lot. Some of them took losing, I mean, there was a lot of dead animals, but they did not really, the employees, the upper management was in charge of cleaning things out. They did not clean things out, you know, in the sow farm. We had plenty of stuff for them to do. We were still farrowing. I would say we escaped that a little bit. I'm not saying that there weren't any. It was tough. I'll tell you what, the firefighters, they come up to me and they just said, you know, we were just crying like a baby. You know, we just could not handle it. I mean, all the squealing that was going on inside those buildings, you know, while they were being, you know, fried to death. You know, it bothered the firefighters probably as much as anybody. They were right there.
I went down to the South site, you know, while they were doing the cleanup and just talked with the employees, especially those at the South site, you know, and just let them know kind of what our plan was, because I think that was part of the issue too. You know, I'm sure they were concerned with, you know, their job. And we just, you know, talked to them and told them, you know, we have a contingency plan, you know, we have plans for expansion and things like that, and just kind of eased their mind that, you know, we will get through this, things will get better, and we will rebound, so.
We didn't tell them that we were thinking about 25 additional inmate workers at that time. We went out and we bought buses out in Colorado. We bought 4 buses. We came back. I was going back to the airport, and the taxi driver says, what in the world are you going to do with 4 buses at home? And I said, you know, you're far enough away from home, I could tell you, but I've got to shoot the other 2 in the back seat. You know, so they didn't know what was going on with the buses. We finally, you know, because, you know, we had to make sure that when we, first of all, was it doable? And then when we finally got the prison on board, you know, then we had to make sure that that information release was released at the right time to everybody so that they didn't kill it before it got going. It actually all worked out really well. Doc.
One thing, Doug talks about biosecurity, and, you know, 2 days later, you're getting calls. I mean, we have no biosecurity. There's buildings that are 100 feet apart or 100 yards apart. We're walking sows outside, and we're not showering from one building to the next. We're hauling sows to program does for that. And so it's just really the last 3-4 weeks that we've been, the buildings are up now, we got farrowing going on. G-Barn just happened, what, a week ago? And we just started to bring all the sows back home. But for 4 months, everything you taught them and the culture that you had instilled, just, oh, forget it, just walk outside.
Very good.
Excellent. Let's give Terry and Julie a big round of applause.